Hey, welcome to Geek Talk. My name's Jonathan Chestnut, and
I am Gerald Williams.
Joshua Soltrin.
And welcome. Today we're talking about various topics that deal with geekdom and the great things that geekdom is all about. We've been watching The Flash. Some of us are behind. Some of us are more behind than others. But it's all good. So we were talking about the idea of where we think The Flash is going, how cool is it, and where do we like to see it go?
Well, I like to see how they evolve from not having so many speedster villains and having more villains that are more psychological towards Barry, like Dr. Alchemy, and now they're introducing Mirror Master, who isn't a speedster but is one of his arch enemies. So they're moving away from having a speedster main villain, but I still think they're going to have speedster villains, such as the Rival and maybe Reverse Flash coming back.
Yeah, they've already established the Reverse Flash is still out there, and that it's Edibar Thong.
He's not going anywhere.
Well, now he's showing up in Legends of Tomorrow, so he's going to be in that series. He's showing up as a villain.
Yeah, I seen the second season trailer for Legends of Tomorrow. The JSA is supposed to, and so they're supposed to be joining that. You actually see the Arrow, Green Arrow and the Flash come in.
Mm-hmm. And Supergirl. She's gonna be
so that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty neat how they're kind of bringing them all together and creating that in the Legends of Tomorrow. I'm a little disappointed this season because Hawkgirl has left the cohort, but it looks like they're going to be taking on Vixen as the JSA Vixen, which is, I'm not really sure because there was a Vixen that was in the Green Arrow series, and I don't think it's the same person, but we'll see. It might be her mother, it might be her grandmother, I don't know. Because their powers are handed down by the little necklace
from generation to generation.
Yeah. All right. So the other topics that we've got listed, like, have y'all kept up on Arrow? What do y'all think of that?
I think this season has improved from last season because I wasn't looking forward to this season at all because of how Arrow kind of season 4 stopped killing people. He wasn't as brutal as he was in season 1. But now we see in this season, he's coming back more brutal, attacking more ferociously to protect his identity and not being such, you can say, kind to the villains anymore.
Well, there's that, and now he's lost. Black Canary's died, and so there's sort of now the game is now real. You're running around in costumes and everything else, and it's all sort of all fine and well when you're the one making the decisions of who lives and dies. But when you start losing people, I didn't really like last season because all the magic.
Damien.
Yeah, I mean, it was just
because you think about it, Green Arrow's abilities is that of an everyday person's, just slightly advanced. He basically has military training to the next level.
Oh yeah.
And then he's really good with a bow and arrow.
Yeah. I like the idea of doing Argus and all these other things they had going on with him, but when they started doing the magic,
he doesn't in a fair. It'd be that would be something I'd want to see the Flash go up against in comparison to Green Arrow because the Flash has a speed, which even though it's not as well of an ability to compensate against magic, the regular human body in compensating against magic isn't going to do as well.
Well, magic is really just, it's just superpowers. So, I mean, you could look at the Flash and he could emulate any kind of magical thing, moving stuff, teleporting things. He could make himself appear magical. So, we get into the idea of magic in comics. It's always, there was an old villain that fought the Flash named Abracadabra, and he was actually he had no magic. He was like one of the few. But he was actually from the future, and he used future tech, and it just looked like magic. And so, but it gets to the idea that Flash is the speedster, and time is always sort of an issue with that. So, what about Supergirl? Y'all keeping up on that?
No, I only watched the episode when Flash came in.
Oh,
what? No, I haven't started the second season yet, but I've seen the trailer also for that. They were talking about how Superman. I don't really like the way Superman looks. I am sincerely disappointed in how he looks. He I don't know if you guys ever seen Smallville, but he looks like a really, 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 really younger version of the teenage Clark Kent from Smallville. And that's just
Well, see, I've seen the actor in Teen Wolf, and he was
Okay,
really
that's where
good.
he's from. I was trying to figure out where else I'd seen him from. That's
Teen Wolf. He was one of the big bad guys in the first season of Teen Wolf, and then he became sort of an ongoing ally. Actually, I've seen it. I've kept up with Supergirl, and he actually pulls it off really well. And the way they're kind of setting it up is he's been Superman for 10 years. So he's not new to this. Everybody kind of knows who he is. And I thought it was interesting because him and John Jones aren't buddies. In the comics, the Martian Manhunter and Superman are always like buddy-buddy because they have that whole we're the last of our kind of thing happening. And John even tries to do that in the show, but Kal-El's kind of like, no, because John Jones is the one that decided to keep kryptonite. He figured needed to keep kryptonite to keep the Kryptonians under control. And so Superman kind of mad at him about doing that. And that's, well, you know.
You don't trust me, can't trust you.
And that's exactly what he says. He says, you want to be my friend, but I can't trust you. And so therefore we don't go that way.
Yeah, it seems like the shows, like you brought up, I haven't watched it, but how John Jones is doing the kryptonite and how you say Arrow is more kind of like Batman plotted. I see they're trying to make up for the loss of a Batman in a TV series. It looks like that.
I'm not sure because in a couple of the episodes, people have made comments like, well, I'm going back to Gotham. And they're, or I'm going back to Bunhaven, which Bunhaven is where Nightwing hangs out. So I don't know. I mean, we might see a Batman show before too long. I mean, they're creating a dynasty in the TV shows.
Yeah.
And so that's something to be said. And they had talked about at one point that Nightwing was going to show up in Arrow, and that would be
Oh yeah, that would be the most amazing episode ever.
And he may still. I mean, I know that in the Suicide Squad movie, Clint Eastwood's son is one of the sort of unnamed soldiers sort of behind them when they come into the prison.
Yep.
And so there's some speculation that he's supposed to be Nightwing, and that he's Nightwing undercover for Batman as part of this whole organization. He's Agent Grayson, which is what DC's been trying to do for a while. I don't know if they'll end up sticking to that. Okay, so the next kind of topics, of course, The Walking Dead's coming up this Sunday, so everybody's excited about that. It's the one show me and my wife watched together. Who do you think's going to catch Lucille?
Glenn or Maggie.
Glenn or Maggie? Think it's going to be Maggie?
I think it's Maggie because, Glenn or Maggie, but Maggie because, number one, she's sick and she's pregnant, and I don't see two babies in the apocalypse because Judith, I mean, she isn't a problem, but I really don't see them having two infants surviving with them in the apocalypse. And then Glenn, even though they kind of faked his death earlier in the season, they try to imply that he died.
Oh, the dumpster.
The dumpster, yeah, but I'm not sure if they're going to kill him because everyone might see it coming, but I think it's either him or Maggie.
You're saying it's Maggie?
She has the
Kill me vibe.
It's time for me to die.
Well, I'm going to stick to Glenn because, when it got leaked that Glenn was supposed to be the one, because he did in the comic, they put up all this smoke screen and everything else. And so I think it's going to be Glenn and one other, maybe one of the other guys, because we're seeing all this influx of new characters. And yeah, they keep a pretty good balanced size ensemble. So if they're going to bring in some new people, some people have to die. Yeah. The killing of Glenn, though, is Glenn's the only person that hasn't killed a human. He hasn't intentionally gone out of his way to kill a human.
That's the other thing. I don't feel like, even though he's died, you said he died in the comics, I'm assuming. But I don't feel like they can kill him until because he's still like pure, and that I feel like that image they're gonna want to keep that one character and find a way to turn him into where he's killed someone, whether it be because they were trying to attack someone else or whether it be they were trying to attack him. And then that's gonna be once he dies. If he dies,
Well, see, he represents hope. And so he represents that last little vestige of humanity. Originally, it was the old farmer dude. The old farmer dude was Herschel was he was the human element. He kept them human. And so, Glenn kind of took up that when he passed away. He married his daughter and took on that mantle. But he's kind of, you know, in the apocalypse, hope has to die at some point. So long as hope exists, then it's not really the apocalypse. So
Yeah, and we can't really base the show off the comics because there's so many things that are different, such as Carol's still alive.
Yep.
And she was supposed to die like near the beginning, and her daughter's still alive, I think, in the comics.
Right. What they've done is they've juxtapositioned some characters that actually stayed alive that should have died. The only the real big difference is there's no Daryl in the comics.
Yeah, that's the biggest.
Which is why Maggie should be the one to die.
Well, but see, if Glenn dies, and then if it follows the suit of the comic, then Maggie becomes this really tough, kind of dark, foreboding, because losing him loses her center, and she becomes.
But see, she just she's ill, really ill.
We'll see. I mean, hey, I'm still laughing at the fact that she was Bruce Wayne's mom in Superman versus Batman. And
I did not notice that.
Yeah, that and what was his name? Negan, the big bad guy, the one that kills Glenn, is Bruce Wayne's dad.
Wow, that's
So-
that's a little thing in there.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, so you catch those little things, and it's just funny. All right, so we talked about the movie Batman versus Superman. Of course, I loved it. I love the extended version.
I've seen that one too.
The extended one really changes the way you see it.
It shows like little. It wasn't like long clips. It was just little bits and pieces here and there that.
And the fight scene's a little longer at the end. It adds a little bit to that, and that to me is what, because I mean, 2 hours of that movie, I'm just sitting there staring at the screen, going, "Where's Wonder Woman? Where's Wonder Woman?" And then poof, there's Wonder Woman. I'm like, "Hey, Wonder Woman!" So.
And I wasn't really looking forward to that movie because Christian Bale was in Batman. And I was like a very big fan of the Dark Knight series. And I loved like just how he portrayed the Dark Knight and just how the Joker in the Dark Knight and all that stuff. And I wasn't just ready to see a new Batman and then a new Joker that would top Heath Ledger. So, but then I realized they were different. This is a different Batman.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And a different Joker.
What we're seeing now is what we would call the Dark Knight Returns Batman. He's from the series done by Frank Miller in the early 80s. And where Batman is old, he's tired, he hung up the cape years ago and he's only putting it back on because things are really going bad. And in that movie, it was really because, he's a nihilist. He's I don't know if nihilist is the word, but he's a pessimist. And he sees Superman as being so powerful and being so unstoppable that he's going to turn on us. Because he can't imagine anyone not at some point. And so we see a different Batman. I actually liked how I just blanked on his name.
Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck did it because the trick isn't playing a good Batman. Batman's easy. You put on a cowl and I'm Batman, and you're Batman. You basically throw batarangs and punch people in the face. The trick is being a good Bruce Wayne. A good Bruce Wayne that can pull that off. And Christian Bale did a great one. And I think that Ben Affleck did a good older Batman version of it. So, but the problem with these, when we get into these kinds of things and the creation of this, we prefer one person to this person, is that these characters are timeless. There's always going to be a new Superman. There's always going to be a new Batman. There's always going to be a new Wonder Woman and Flash and everything else. And there's always going to be re-envisioned because we have creative liberties with them. We can do whatever we want. And so long as they're making money, they're going to keep putting them out there. All right, so a couple of the movies that we were going to mention. Doctor Strange.
Oh, yes.
Excited? Not excited?
Oh, yes.
Looks
The
interesting.
first Marvel movie, technically, that takes away from the Avengers and puts into spectrum, because a lot of people probably don't know that Doctor Strange is just as important to the Avengers because outside of technically Thor, all of them are susceptible to magic. And to me, Doctor Strange faces all of the threats that no one else can understand. That's amazing. I'm ready for this movie to come out.
I think he's going to be part of Iron Man's Avengers. Because you remember in the end of Captain America Civil War, Captain America said he's taking his team, but you can have the title of Avengers. That's what he was telling Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Doctor Strange is going to be joining Iron Man, but I'm not sure what other heroes are going to be joining Iron Man.
Well, see, I feel like they're gonna get back together anyways. When Avengers, part 1 of Infinity Gauntlet comes out. So at the end of the day, that doesn't even.
Yeah, they're all going to be together in the end.
You're right.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna see a little bit of a fray, but not much, because they're gonna bring them back together for the Thanos story arc. I'm honestly not excited for Doctor Strange
Why not?
because I've seen Inception.
Okay.
I read that. They were saying it looks like an Inception.
Okay. And see, I thought the same thing, that it looked like an Inception spinoff, but I mean, it's only so much you can do because I feel like they're gonna. If you think about it, every Marvel movie that's been made has a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like they're gonna do the same with all the other ones that they make, and so there's only so much you can do to explain who Doctor Strange is and how he comes from before you because you don't want to. If you put too much into a movie, then you can't make a sequel to it because you've already put all that in.
But see, the reality is Doctor Strange isn't supposed to be a likable character. He's supposed to be. People are
He's
all
supposed to be like basically a smart aleck.
Well, no, Spider-Man's a smart aleck. He is, he, as a surgeon, and he always saw himself as better than everyone. So he always has this sort of high horse. And then he becomes the supreme sorcerer of the universe.
Well, I mean,
That's a pretty high horse.
it was. I mean, yeah, but like even because in the trailer you see it, like his response to the woman that ends up training him, and she says, "Mr. Strange," and he's like, "No, it's Doctor," and like I mean that's his like his attitude towards things. You know, he has to. It's a correction.
Mm-hmm.
I have to correct people on what they're doing. So I feel like it'll be an interesting take on it once he sees and realizes who he is. I feel like you have to give him a story arc first before he can be the Doctor Strange we all know and hate.
Well, see, I actually enjoy not liking these movies or not being ready to like these movies because I wasn't ready to like Ant-Man. I mean, I'm old school comics, and I remember Ant-Man, and it was like they're making an Ant-Man movie. I was picturing cartoon ants, and I had this whole dumb vision in my mind. And then the movie was just so good.
It was.
And it was because Ant-Man was an ensemble cast. He had all these really great other people around him that made such a great story. And so, and of course, I was like, oh, they're not even doing the first Ant-Man. They're not doing Hank Pym. They're doing the second guy. And, I never liked that character, but it worked out so well. I mean, the cast was just amazing. It played out so well. So I'm kind of like, I don't want to like it because then that gives me a lot more ground to make up when it comes out and I'm like, it was amazing, and I feel so much better about it. But
I respect that.
all right, so they wrote down Star Wars Rogue One. I mean, we're talking mostly about superheroes, but Star Wars, we're all geeks. That is the bread and butter of.
Yeah, grew up on it.
Yeah. And what's sad is so did I, and I'm much older than you.
I was hoping to see Kyle Katarn in Rogue One. If you know who that is, he was in the Jedi Academy games, but in Dark Forces, but they didn't show him. They might have him in the end, I hope, but Jan was the one who was always with Kyle. But I think it's going to focus on Jan, these series of rogues.
I think it's honestly just the idea that they're expanding the universe, and that they're bringing in characters that they're not beating the same thing over and over again. I mean, Han dying in that last Star Wars. I mean, they have to die at some point. It's the world they live in. So I don't know. I'm excited to see. I mean, I grew up on Star Wars too, and I survived the first three when they came out. I took my wife to see the second one, and she swore she'd never go to a movie with me again after that. Yeah, that just makes it cheap. Works for me. Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Honestly, I don't know much about that. I know,
I thought the first one, because the issue with that is, if you've seen the first one, you understand that that's technically the first stone. Because Guardians of the Galaxy came out before Age of Ultron.
Right, but not before Captain America that had the Tesseract.
Yeah, the Tesseract is.
Oh yeah, the Tesseract is the first one. So
and then
that's
Thor has the second one. Thor,
The energy from the Dark World.
Dark World, the red thing is
Was it
another
this-
stone.
That's one of the stones.
I'm gonna have to look back in. Well, the purple one is the one that the Guardians of the Galaxy had.
Right,
which
power.
And so I feel like that means they're gonna add them into it as well.
Oh, they're definitely in it.
Well, no, I mean like add them. I feel like that would have to put them in the age of the Infinity Gauntlet,
They're going to be in Infinity Gauntlet.
and so I feel like that'll be interesting. Just because they're out, it's weird to try and find an outer space ragtag team to come in and fly in, unless they're gonna say we're after Thanos. Like,
They may not be after Thanos, but there are stones on Earth. And if they're looking for the stones to keep Thanos from getting them, that's going to bring them to Earth, which is, in the comics, basically what happened.
it'll be interesting to see how they bring them in.
Well, and the fact that one of them is half human, so they can play on that. They've showed the Nova Corps, but they haven't showed the superpowered Nova Corps members. And so there's like a Nova Corps member from Earth that has super strength, flight, can go through space, and do all these other things. So that might incorporate that. Who knows?
Yeah.
Spider-Man Homecoming is listed. Again, we're rebooting Spider-Man.
Third
But-
time.
But it's not supposed to be the traditional Spider-Man, from what I'm understanding. It's not supposed to be, I just got bit by a spider. I'm Spider-Man. Wow. So, I feel like it'll be better because it's not, I just got bit by a spider type of Spider-Man. It's supposed to be a couple of years after he's already been bit by the spider and what he's been doing, and they're supposed to have a villain in that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're going to do what they did with Batman and Superman. Basically, they just flash back to the origins. They're not gonna spend a lot of time and energy retelling the story over and over again, because how many times can you retell that story before we all? I mean,
It's different every time, little by little.
yeah, but it's a part of our mythology. I mean,
Most
the American mythology in Spider-Man and getting his powers, and with great power comes great responsibility kind of mentality and all that.
Most definitely.
But it'd be interesting to see where they go with it. I like the idea of a high school Spider-Man, where he's that young and it's not him trying to break out on his own and doing all these other things, where he's just a kid. But then, of course, then you have to ask yourself, what kind of superhero is Iron Man for putting this kid in harm's way? Even if he does have superpowers, he flew him around the world to make him fight other superpower people, and basically it's, endangering a youth. I don't get that, but they wanted to interject Spider-Man into that one, so we'll see how that works out. All right, so bottom line, this is the last question, and of course, we always we used to close these out with questions from people, but since we're just rebooting, we haven't got any new questions yet, so we're going to start looking for that for next time. But what are your favorite superheroes? I know what mine is. What's yours?
Are we talking about from DC or just Marvel?
Just whatever, man.
I mean, if we're going, for me, my favorite superhero of all time from DC is The Flash, but it would be Impulse.
Impulse is the Flash?
Well, Impulse is an ancestor to The Flash.
Yeah, I know who he is.
And so, I mean, that's what would be those specific. It's Flash in general, like all Flashes I enjoy, but Impulse specifically is mine.
Okay. So that series when Impulse first appeared
Is my favorite.
Okay.
But then if we're talking about Marvel, it's really, really a close tie between the Hulk and Wolverine. Like, it's just because the Hulk is huge, but the fact that he's so huge and so strong gives him so many other extra abilities that people just don't understand.
Okay, so let's break this down. Your favorite DC person has impulse control issues. Your favorite two Marvel characters have rage and violent issues. Okay, just checking it out. All right, what are yours?
Well, in Marvel, I have to agree with you on the Hulk. He's been my favorite ever since I was little. I just enjoyed how the first Hulk, the one where it was the really big green one, I mean, I enjoyed that movie. And then I watched The Incredible Hulk, which I enjoyed even more, and which was one of my favorite Hulks. I preferred that Hulk over the Avengers one, but it's just how the Hulk, nothing can really stop him, but he can be manipulated. How we in like the movie Hulk versus Thor, you see Loki manipulating the Hulk's mind, but still the Hulk overcame Loki.
Mhm.
And then in DC, my favorite superhero has to be Batman, because just how we were saying about Arrow, how Arrow is just a man with some skills. Batman is a man with skills, but it's just he can defeat pretty much any superhero he wants. It's just how technical he is. He looks into the situation, into all the different ways it could go, and that's how he defeats whoever he's going against.
Yeah, with Batman, it's always about preparation. If he has a plan going in,
I just feel as if without a plan, though, like Batman is good with preparation, but if there was not preparation, like that's the only thing. If any superhero really wanted to, they would end Batman if he didn't know.
Well, I mean, we see in the movie Doom, if you've seen that one, the animated movie, where he has a way to kill every Justice League member, and then the villains use it against him. But he was still prepared for when if someone had to use it the wrong way, he knew a way how to fix it.
Well, yeah, I mean, preparation, like we were saying, like I completely agree. Batman is really good because of preparation. But like, let's say, like, it sounds crazy, but if the roles were reversed and Batman was the one that had to, Batman still was just a regular human, he had destroyed like Superman's house basically, and Superman was like, I've got to kill this guy. Batman would have had no time to prepare for Superman to just go kill him.
yeah, and Batman's addressed that in the past.
So that's my thing. Like,
Well, see, he knows Superman won't kill. That's not Superman's go-to. So no matter how mad he makes Superman, so he's made Superman pretty mad before.
yeah,
But yeah, he does make contingency plans in case they're controlled or they're dominated or if they just turn villainous. But in like he said, he referenced Doom, and in Doom it was pretty much the same thing. It was like, well, what plan did you come up with yourself? I helped form the Justice League. His contingency plan for dealing with himself was having all these heroes together so that they could stop him if something was to go wrong. My favorite is, of course, Green Lantern. I'm old school Green Lantern. I like Alan Scott, the first Green Lantern, the guy that he could make stuff with his ring, but it couldn't affect wood. I never quite understood it, but it's cool. Actually, I understood it because when he first got his ring, it was supposed to give him magnetic powers. And so the first issue, they had him get knocked out by a piece of wood, and so that just kind of stuck. But I've always liked the idea that it's just a dude. He's just a guy. He's not even, like Batman is super intense. Batman is crazy. There's just no way to he's crazy and all of his villains are crazy. There's a conversation that's been had about parallel existences of villains to heroes. Like, Thor fights other god characters. Spider-Man fights other animal-based characters like the Vulture, the Scorpion, the Rhino, all these animal-based. And then like Wonder Woman fights other Amazons or mystic women or other feminist kind of entities, Captain America and that. And so Batman's has always been, he's crazy and his villains are crazy. And so that's kind of an interesting direction. But I always like just the fact that he was just a dude and he had a ring, he put the ring on and suddenly he had all this responsibility, but it was bound to his creativity. And as teaching art and being an art professor and all of that, it's all about creativity and energy. So Green Lantern's always been my dude in DC. Marvel, weirdly enough, my favorite character in Marvel is Speed Demon.
okay.
He's a super speedster that fights Spider-Man. He's one of Spider-Man's sinister villains, Sinister Six or whatever they're called. But he's also been a member of the Thunderbolts, and I always liked him because he's a speedster on par with Quicksilver, the X-Men guy. Magneto's son. But in the movies, the X-Men movies, they've made Quicksilver like the Flash. And while Quicksilver's fast,
He's not as fast as the Flash.
he's not even. They're not even on the same scoreboard, because Flash can run at speed of light and move through time. Quicksilver's fast. He can run like Mach 2, Mach 3. And for me, that makes a much more interesting character because Flash, for as being as fast as he is, it's like unreasonably.
When you're at a speed like that, it's not fathomable.
Well, yeah, and I'm like, okay, well, he's fighting Captain Cold. Captain Cold is just a regular dude with a ray gun that shoots cold. He should be able to run in, take the ray gun apart, put him in handcuffs, and put him in the cell before he even knows anything's happened, before his mind could comprehend what's going on. And so that's why I've always sort of had a problem with the Flash. In the 90s, they decreased the Flash's speed, where he was like Mach 6 or 7. He could, in a straight line, he could do really, really fast, but moving in combat and stuff like that, he wasn't nearly as fast. And the stories for me were much cooler, and that's when we start seeing like other speedsters, like Salvor and a few others that showed up. That the speedsters, they weren't all like this super ridiculously moving fast as light speed. So the stories were much more interesting. They at one point he got shot because he wasn't watching in a direction, and the guy was so close that when he fired, he couldn't get out of the way because he couldn't build up enough speed. So it was just kind of interesting. And so I always liked Speed Demon because Speed Demon had to think about, he did a lot of neat tricks with his super speed, but he wasn't ridiculous like that. But apparently I just got the signal, so I think we're kind of done for today. Send your questions if you want us to talk about anything specific. We'll definitely do it. Welcome back. Hope to hear from you.
Geek Talk.
Geek Talk.